again, my name is Anders and this is SaxWorks. This short video is all about reviving old flat springs. I know you guys have been in a situation when you do an overhaul where you're thinking, this flat spring, it doesn't look right, it looks a little brittle, or it looks too soft, or it's too rusty, and then you replace them with new springs. But there's a really simple way you can revive these old springs to make them function and look brand new and last for 100 years again. This is what this video is all about. These are the few things that you will need to revive old flat springs. You need a propane torch, you need some water, you need an annealing device or a tempering device, and I just use this. You can use something else, and that's it. The first thing you want to do is heat up the spring, and it needs to be a color which is like a cherry red. And when it's cherry red, you plunge it into water. So let's do that. The trick is to kind of try and heat it so it's evenly red. It's no good that it's red just at the tip, it needs to be red all the way. So now I need to heat it a little bit in the bottom here and just try to get an even color of all the spring. This is pretty good, and then into water. Now the spring is very, very hard. It was heated up and plunged into water. And you can see there's a lot of debris on here, but that I'll just have to sand off. But now you have to be very careful, because now it is very, very brittle and it'll break like a thin piece of glass. So be very careful with it now. Now we need to temper it to get it to be a spring again. Now it's time to take off all the old dirty looking surface and make it shine. Just be very careful. I just use this sanding block, which is a foam based sanding block, so it's soft. Just want to get rid of that old and burnt surface. You know, the thing that sits on the surface is actually burnt carbon. So it is, that's why it turns black, because spring steel has a fairly high amount of carbon content. It's the carbon in the steel that makes it hardenable, so we can harden it and use it for a spring. If it didn't have carbon, it would just be plain iron, and we cannot harden iron. The two springs are done. They are both sanded down. This one I polished just to show you the difference in appearance once it has been tempered. So now it's time to temper. The process of tempering steel is essentially just a heat treatment. What you do is, when you harden the steel and you plunge it into water, the crystalline structure of the metal gets very, very dense. So it actually changes the crystalline structure inside the steel once you harden it. And that is essentially the process of hardening. That is making the crystalline structure much more aligned and much more dense. It's really important that this procedure, the spring is exposed to a very even amount of heat. this is the blue color, and it means it is all a spring again. It has been tempered perfectly, so now it actually works as a spring. Now it's not brittle anymore. Now it works as a spring, and it has good tension. It's hard, but it's flexible, so that's good. It looks good. It also prevents the spring from rusting, and yeah, I think it looks quite nice. That was the one I polished, and this one is the one I just sanded down. I don't know if you can see it. It's a little more uneven on the surface, but still it has a real nice blue color. In Denmark we call this King's Blue. I don't know what you call it in America or England, but just look at that color. It's really nice. King's Blue. That's what we want. In Switzerland, I probably think they call them watch screw blue or something like that. Just to make one thing perfectly clear, if you have flat springs that are made of copper or brass, you cannot use this method, because brass gets soft when you heat it, and so does copper. If you want a copper spring to become stronger or softer, if you want it softer, which is very seldom the case, you often want it to be a little stronger, then what you need to do is just gently tap it with a mallet, and that could be a Delrin mallet or whatever. Just slowly tap it like this, and just continue doing that and feel how it improves and how it gets a little harder. One of the advantages of using old springs instead of just replacing them with new springs is that the old steel is actually a much better quality steel than the steel springs you're going to get today. And if you do this process, you actually kind of reset the steel. So this is just like a completely new spring. It'll last 100 years again, and you can do the same in 100 years again, and it'll last 100 years more. But steel, if you just keep on working it, it gets harder and harder and harder, and eventually it'll break. So to do this every 50 years or so is actually a good thing. You also get a spring that is just a little more responsive than it originally was, because probably, and you can experiment with this, you don't have to stop when it's King Blue. You can keep on until it gets a kind of brownish blue, which is a very darker blue. Then it gets a little softer. So try experimenting with this, because it really pays off if you want to take your time and get the keywork to feel really well. Do a little experimentation on how your springs feel. And you can do this yourself, it's not difficult. Just to remember, you need to temper them once you have hardened them in your water. And you'll get a really nice looking result.